Hello and welcome to my channel, In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and these are my weekly wonderings and wonderings. As per usual, I'm getting this vlog started on Saturday morning. It is February 28th, and my goodness, it feels like legitimate spring here. You can see I am going out to run errands, and I am not wearing a coat. I'm sure that winter will make a reappearance, probably even this week, but right now I'm going to enjoy the beautiful weather. I don't know if I'll be able to. I would love to take a walk later, but we have a lot going on today. Well, not me necessarily. My kids have a very busy social calendar today, and my husband is busy ferrying around one or the other or both of them at different points through the day, so we'll see. I am off to run some errands, and I am hoping to go to a couple thrift stores and see if I can hunt down some books. And those are my big plans other than housekeeping stuff and finishing up some reading. I did finish reading The Innocents Abroad just now, literally just now, finished the last page. And I have already been sharing about it as I have been reading it throughout the month of February. So I won't say too much more other than that. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. It was long, but it was a massive epic trip that Mark Twain took, Samuel Clemens, I guess, through Europe and the Holy Land by ship. And his perspective was humorous, insightful, quite sarcastic at times. He was frequently skeptical of the things that he saw with good reason, and occasionally bordering on cynical, and philosophically, theologically, probably would disagree with him on certain points from his observations. But I enjoyed it overall. Definitely, he was fully honest. I mean, you could tell when he was telling a tall tale and he was just making things up. So in that sense, it wasn't honest, but because he definitely had some of those tall tales in there. But it was usually pretty obvious when he was doing that. But he also was very honest about his opinions about the things that he saw and the cultures and the people and everything. And he was not afraid to call a spade, which nowadays, culturally, we prefer politeness over truth and honesty a lot of times. And so we are very polite about our observations about people and other things, even if privately we have other thoughts. So it was honestly kind of refreshing to hear his honest, unabashed thoughts about the things that he was saying and the cultures and traditions and whatever. I honestly much prefer that sort of honesty. And he also was unabashedly American. He was not blind to the faults of his fellow travelers, especially when you get to the conclusion and he talks about how he knew that his travel companions were perceived by people in other countries, and some of the things that tourists of that day did that were not exactly, I don't know what the word is, appropriate, I guess. Things like taking relics or like chipping off stone off of a building or something like that. You know, that in particular he got very frustrated with people who did it. But it wasn't like everybody did it. It was just, some people here and there would do that sort of thing. And the foolishness of the perspective of some of the passengers would frustrate him sometimes. So he wasn't blind about any of that. But at the same time, he would always, if he could make an honest, positive comparison of an American scene to the scene that he was appreciating in the moment, he definitely would. He would say, there was some famous body of water, I can't even remember which one it was, that they were seeing, and he had a really lovely paragraph about how Lake Tahoe far surpassed what he was seeing at the moment, And he described Lake Tahoe and the beauties of Lake Tahoe. And having seen Lake Tahoe myself, I would have to agree with him that it is a beautiful, gorgeous lake. And I'm not sure how many would compare to it around the world. I'm sure it's equal, but the particular site that he was seeing at that point in time didn't measure up. And so he wasn't afraid to say, well, we've got better lakes in America, or we've got better mountains. But at the same time, he gave honor where it was due, and he appreciated other sites that he was seeing.
Hello, Editing Ann here. When I was going through my video and editing it, I realized that I left out some important thoughts about The Innocents Abroad by Mark Twain. I mentioned that I found his honesty refreshing, but I forgot to say, because I was in a hurry to get started running my errands, that even though I found it refreshing that he was brutally honest in a world where so often we hear fake politeness all the time, I appreciated the fact that he was brutally honest. I just want to clarify that I don't agree with him on everything, and also I would never say things in the way that he says them. I don't necessarily uphold brutality in honesty as being something we should strive for, but at the same time, it acts as a little bit of a counterbalance to the opposite extreme, if that makes sense. If we could all, meet somewhere in the middle and be able to speak the truth in love, as scripture says, that would be really great. Really great.
In his travels. So I enjoyed The Innocents Abroad very much, and highly recommend it if you like travel writing at all, if you like traveling, and also if you like history, because it was really fantastic to get that historic perspective of him traveling in 1867 and being a tourist then at that point in time. That was really so fun. Anyway, so off I am to run my errands and maybe do a little bit of used book shopping, and I will check in with you later.
It's warm enough to drink an iced coffee today. Later, the same day. It's still Saturday, February 28th, but now we have come more or less to the end of the day. I will be reading a little bit more, but at least I hope I have some time to do that. But I figured now is as good a time as any to wrap up the month of February and kind of go over what I read and didn't read quickly. And I got a new phone this week, and this is the first time I'm trying to record on it, and it has this portrait mode, which is kind of fun. I like that. Anyway, first of all, I need to update my tracker because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. And it's currently at 21. Let's switch out that 1 for a 4. And of course, I can find every number but 4. There we go. 24 books read in February. I almost said, no, not even in February, in 2026 so far. I almost said in March, but 24 books altogether. What were the books that I read in February? Let's real quick look at that page. I have Loyally Luke by Basham and To Love a Beast by Karen Witemeyer, which Loyally Luke I gave 3.5 stars. To Love a Beast I also gave 3.5 stars. The Hour That Changes the World by Dick Eastman. I think I also gave 3.5 stars. And then A Tale of Two Cities, 5 stars. Austen at Sea, 3 stars. The Innocents Abroad, which I finished today, 5 stars. And Pemberly or Pride and Prejudice Continued by Emma Tennant, 2 sad little stars. Georgette Hare's Friday's Child, 5 stars. Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, 3 stars. The Rumpled Gentleman by Sally Britton, 3 stars. A Disguise of the Worst Sort by Sarah Courtney, 3 stars. And I forgot to talk about this one. So, A Disguise of the Worst Sort is a book that I picked up. By the way, if you hear noises, it's my dishwasher. Sorry about that. There it goes. Anyway, A Disguise of the Worst Sort was a book I picked up during a Stuff Your Kindle sale, I think, you know, where they had the books for free. And it is a Pride and Prejudice fantasy. And it involves fairies and fairy magic. So I thought Once Upon a February was a good time to read that one, as well as it ties in with Febregency. So it was another one that had a nice combination of those two things. And the idea was that Caroline Bingley and Elizabeth Bennet, through the medium of fairy magic, end up trading bodies and temporarily confusing Mr. Darcy. There is a twist in the plot. It doesn't obviously follow the plot of Pride and Prejudice exactly. It takes a different direction. But, you know, same characters, same end result, etc. And it was really interesting because it kind of explores the idea, like, how much does a person's looks play in the role of the relationship and whether, you know, someone likes them or not. What they look like, how much of that is part of the picture. And how much of it is their personality, their character, their integrity, etc. All of those things. And is Mr. Darcy able to find out that he's being tricked? Is he able to recognize that it's really not Elizabeth Bennet? It is actually Caroline Bingley in Elizabeth Bennet's body. So it was an interesting premise. It was a fun little ride. It was clean. Actually, everything I read was very clean. No issues with any of that. So that's what I read and the ratings that I gave it. Let's talk about the monthly events I participated in. First of all, Febregency. So this was my spread for that. I have not finished my Febregency reads yet. And actually, my most academic and intellectual reading for Febregency I'm still working on. One is the letters to Alice upon reading Jane Austen the first time, which I am I've read through chapter 4, or the 4th letter now, and I guess there actually are 16 altogether. I thought there was like 12, but there's like 16. So I'm about a quarter of the way through that, and then I think maybe more though, because I think some of the earlier letters are longer than the later ones. And then I'm also still reading Georgette Hare's Regency World, and like a third of the way through that one, maybe slightly more. So I have quite a ways to go in that, but I'm going to add them to this list when I've read them because I'm reading them on purpose for Febregency, even if I don't finish them in February. But the other things that I read were kind of disappointing, honestly. Austen at Sea by Natalie Jenner, which just had too much going on and didn't focus enough on one thing. And then there was like one whole point of the story that just at some point got completely derailed, and then you get to the ending and you're like, what? We went all these pages, you know, pursuing this one thing, and then interesting. So I didn't love that one. I was a little bit disappointed in parts of it, but also it wasn't a terrible read at the same time. Like, I read all the way through, and there were things that I did like about it as well. So 3 stars for that one. Pemberly by Emma Tennant was just a mess, total mess. It was supposed to be like a continuation of Pride and Prejudice, and in my opinion, failed utterly. Friday's Child by Georgette Hare was 5 stars for me all the way. I really enjoyed that one. It's one of my favorites now by Georgette Hare. Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater was very enjoyable. It was set in the Regency era, and it also had fairy tale elements, so I read it for Once Upon a February as well and enjoyed that. A Disguise of the Worst Sort, again, by Sarah Courtney. Same idea. So Febregency was a mixed bag, and I'm not finished with it yet, but it was overall enjoyable. I mean, I always love that aspect of things. I love Regency stuff. And then the Once Upon a February readathon, I got a blackout there only because I was able to use books that were not necessarily fairy tale retellings, although I did read a few one or two fairy tale retellings, and then I read a few fairy tale adjacent books, and then I was able to fill in the blanks, or fill in the, with some other books. So I won't go into detail of all of those, but I was pretty happy about getting the bingo board blacked out. The fairy tales that I actually read were To Love a Beast and The Rumpled Gentleman. Those were the actual fairy tale retellings I read. But then Half a Soul and A Disguise of the Worst Sort were had fairy elements in them, like fairy world things going on. So February was a continuation of the Brighter Winter Reading Challenge, and I didn't do as well with the February board as I did with the January one. It just, a lot of the stuff didn't fit in with what I was reading. But I did read a book in a genre I don't normally gravitate toward, which was The Rumpled Gentleman. 2 books set in the same region about the same topic, and that was Austen at Sea and Pemberly. Both fit that. Read a book that has humor in it, Loyally Luke. Several of mine would have qualified, but that one was one. Free Space. And I put The Hour That Changes the World in that one. So, not a super success. I did have a DNF, 2 DNFs. Jane Austen's Charlotte by Julia Barrett was a bit of a disappointment. And 6 Weeks by the Sea was a big disappointment by Paula Byrne, because I had high hopes for that one and did not deliver. And then I did add 2 nonfiction to my list, which is good. Now I have 4 nonfiction, which is a pretty good start to that for me. The Hour That Changes the World by Dick Eastman and The Innocents Abroad by Mark Twain, which is like a travel diary, so that's nonfiction, right? And then from my shelf, I have 12 books read, and I guess actually 12 out of 24, that's exactly half, which is my goal, 50%. So that's good. Here is my 2026 book tracker. The pink books are the ones that I read in February. So that is nice. Looking good there. And so, after much debate, I did decide to use To Love a Beast by Karen Witemeyer for my Read Your Bookshelf Challenge for February with 3 or more objects on the cover. It was a big dilemma, but I did it. So I read that one early on in the month. And then for Jeanette's Christian Fiction Bingo, I actually failed. Well, I succeeded halfway. I read 1 book, the fairy tale retelling, which was To Love a Beast by Karen Witemeyer, and also I read The Rumpled Gentleman, which isn't Christian fiction though, so I didn't put it on there. And then I didn't ever end up reading one with heart in the title, so I'm kind of bummed about that. I do still have the same 2 books available, and I think they're my Hoopla. The same 2 books that I had thought, Hearts in Circulation by Sarah Monzon and Hearts of Bennett Hollow. And I still want to read one or the other of them, so I'm eventually going to get around to it, but I didn't do it in February, so I haven't colored that one in yet. And for Alma's Journey Through Time, I did read Friday's Child by Georgette Hare as the historical romance set in the Regency era, appropriately. So, and then for my challenge, this is the February one, and I read The Innocents Abroad, which is a funny book, and it was indeed funny. So, that is my summary of how the month of February went for me. So, not too bad overall. I have some things left undone that I would like to get to sooner rather than later, so I'll be working on those, but that was my February. I forgot to mention in my February wrap-up that I read 2 books in my 10 at a time. Actually, A Tale of Two Cities, I finished. I had started a while back. And then Friday's Child was another one in my 10 at a time. So that means I need to choose 2 more books from my jar to add to my 10 at a time to bring it back to 10. Also, next month, A Woman of No Importance is, I believe, on my 10 at a time currently. So if I actually do read that one in March, I will get to replace another one. So what am I doing? I'm just like looking at them like I'm going to choose by looking. No, I'm going to choose blindly. So if I can get my little fingers in there. Oh, well, that's nice. I can put this one on there. Charlotte by Julia Barrett. I read it. Well, I DNF'd it. So, but that counts. So, nice. Eliminating some books on here. All right. Oh. This is Mixed Signals by Liz Curtis Higgs. That's fun. That's a fun one. Okay, I'm going to put that in the envelope. One more. And All My Secrets by Lynn Austen. Well, these are actually fun picks. They're both Christian fiction picks, and I think would be pretty easy reads. So, I'm going to add them to my little envelope that I will hopefully be picking from as we go forward in the year. Like I said, I do have one on my March TBR already, which is The Woman of No Importance. And so hopefully I can keep knocking these out. So far, it's a rate of one a month. I would like it to be a little more than that, but it's okay. If not, we'll survive. All right. That was my little addendum. It is Thursday evening, and I am at a thrift store because next week is Spirit Week at school. And Spirit Week is a big deal at my school. And so there are 3 of us who have different outfits we need to make for every single day next week. Mine, I try for the most part to keep pretty simple, stuff I have at home. But my boys make their plans without regard to the reality of what they actually own or is possible to get. So theirs gets a little more tricky. So I'm going to hop into the thrift store and see if there's anything that can be useful for Spirit Week next week. And also just, a thrift store is just fun. So going to do that. I really want to finish reading Letters to my niece Alice on reading Jane Austen. I am close to being done with that one. I want to finish that tonight. That's my goal. But I have a busy evening. I'm doing the errand running right now. And then when I get home later this evening, I'm going to have a meeting with the other admins of the Christian Booktuber community, which, by the way, shameless plug, we are really wanting to make this a very useful resource for all the Christian booktubers out there. So if you are a Christian and you have a booktube channel and you post regular content, bookish content on there, there is always a link in the description box for you to apply to join our community. So the idea is that we support one another, we follow one another, we engage with one another, we collaborate with one another, we just chit chat, we share prayer requests. The prayer requests have been, in fact, very much a blessing. So to all of the members. So if you are interested, fill out the application below. But anyways, I'm going to have a virtual meeting with them this evening to hash out some plans to make it an even better space. And then I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow with a new doctor. And because it's a new doctor, I have to fill out all of this health information of my whole entire life and my whole entire family history. You know how that goes. So I have to do all that tonight in preparation for the appointment tomorrow. So I don't know how much I'm going to get right, but that's my goal. I did finish reading The Lady's Mind yesterday,
But right at this moment, I want to go into the thrift store while it's still open. And so later on, perhaps I will hop on here and film a clip with my thoughts about that Lady's Mind by Francine Rivers. If I don't get to it today, I may have to do that tomorrow. So anyway, let's go thrifting.
Hi, it's Editing Ann again because I forgot something else. I did all of that thrifting and then I didn't show you what I got, and I don't even know if you really care, but if you do, here's what I got. So I found these like suit pants slash tux pants that I'm not sure my boys will fit. I'm not sure about the size of it, but they're gonna try that on. They were half off, so they're like $3.50, and they need them for a couple of different things during the course of the week. My one son is gonna be Calvin and his friend is gonna be Hobbs. And he needs a red and black striped shirt. I couldn't find a red and black striped shirt. I have a red one. I don't know if he can like draw with Sharpie some black stripes on it, or maybe use some black electric tape or something. I don't know, we're gonna try. And then my younger son is Wreck-It Ralph, which is proving to be extremely difficult because the actual costumes for that are very expensive. Bib overalls are very expensive, are not available locally around here anywhere. And at least maybe like I could probably go look at the Tractor Supply store. They'd probably have some, but they'd probably also be like $40, $50 or more. I'm not spending that for Spirit Week. So I found some pants, and then somehow we're gonna try and fashion like the bib overall part on a shirt. So, yay me. Sounds like so much fun. And then there's color day is one of the days, and orange, blue, and green are the colors. So I found this orange hat. My son ordered an orange prison jumpsuit from Amazon. So he's gonna wear that and his orange hat. And then a couple of days, they need like really fancy outfits. So I got a bow tie and a vest because we don't have a suit vest. And the rest are things for me. So one of the days that I'm going to be doing is Crazy Hair Day. So the Dollar Tree had these, I did that the other day, but I'm just showing it. The Dollar Tree had these like headbands, spa headbands. And so I got those, and then these terry cloth scrunchies. Crazy hair. The point is not to be, you know, fashionable, but crazy. So, and then for color day, my color is blue. So I got these. Probably will put them in my hair somehow. And then I got these for my footwear. And this is not as exciting, but I also figured I could use it after Spirit Week. And it was new with tags. And it was 25% off. So this plaid flannel hoodie, different shades of blue. So that is for Blue Day as well. And so I am getting set for Spirit Week. So, all right, now on with the rest of the video.
Hello, so it is Friday afternoon and I am waiting in car line to pick up my kids. Yes, normally I am at school with them, but today I had a doctor's appointment. What's wrong with my seatbelt? Anyway, so now I am picking them up. Anyway, so, I finished reading The Lady's Mind earlier this week and had fun participating somewhat belatedly in Oshina's Fable Book Group. Thankfully, there were one or two other stragglers who were also reading it when I was reading it. I don't know if I'll be able to make any of the live this weekend, but I'm certainly going to try to at least catch some of it. But anyway, overall, I enjoyed it. It's definitely not my favorite Francine Rivers book. It's not as heavy as some of her other books, as most of her other books, and it doesn't deal with as weighty topics. That's not the reason I didn't like it. She doesn't have to write a heavy, weighty book every time she picks up her pen. So it wasn't that. It was just that I didn't love the characters, which again is not enough to make me dislike a book. The last book that I read by her, The Bridge to Haven, which I think the Oshina's group read in January, but I had just read it a year or two ago, so I didn't want to reread it so soon. That one, that main character there, she is very unlikable for most of the story. But the key difference is it is not presented as being healthy or good, like the way that she was. It was obvious that she was struggling in life and that she had things she needed to learn. There were things that needed to, like there was development that needed to take place in The Bridge to Haven. Whereas in The Lady's Mine, the things that I disliked in the characters, it wasn't clear that they were negative qualities, and yet they really were. So our main character, the girl, Catherine, she was so headstrong and so impulsive and honestly arrogant. She comes into this town on the West Coast during the Gold Rush era, and she sees all of these issues and flaws. Mind you, she's coming from Boston. She has no experience in the Wild West. She has no understanding of how mining towns operate. She doesn't know any of the people there. She comes in and she takes a quick look around, makes some snap judgments, and figures out in her mind everything that needs to be fixed, how it needs to be fixed, and she's going to fix it. Kind of in a nutshell. That's not exactly how everything goes down, but that's her attitude. And she immediately meets resistance, not as much as I think would be realistic. Like, personally, I feel like they would have run her out of town. I think she wouldn't have been able to do half the things that the author allows her to do in the story in a real world. So I really did not love how her character was portrayed. And the male main character, so essentially it was a historical romance, which Francine Rivers it says in her author's note at the end that she just wanted a light book. She wrote it during the pandemic, and she just wanted a light, fun book that still had some depth and some quality to it. So that was her goal. She wasn't trying to write a weighty, heavy book, and it was historic romance. It was a rework of one of her books back when she was a romance writer before she became a Christian, and so she rewrote it as a Christian historic romance. Anyway, so the male main character, he was not a Christian at the beginning and of the story, and it was very obvious, like very obvious. He was very aggressive and very like domineering, and so it was just, in my opinion, not very attractive, honestly. So I've these two people who did not have the sort of characters that would attract me or that I find good in a person or appealing or winsome or any of those things. Somehow they're falling in love with each other, and I just don't understand. And it seemed to be largely based on physical appearances, especially for the first part of the book, the first half of the book, for sure. As they get to know each other, that changes. That's not that way all the way through the book. There is some character development. There is some. Enough for me to say that I'm glad that I read it, that it was, in the end I gave it, I don't know, 3 or 4 stars. I can't remember. By the end, it wasn't a terrible experience because there was enough character development for me to feel like Francine Rivers wasn't trying to portray Catherine's character as being, ideal or good even. So in the end, it was okay, but it was definitely not my favorite Francine Rivers and not my favorite book, not my favorite historical romance. But it was enjoyable, and I really enjoyed the conversation that sprang up around it in the book club and getting different people's thoughts and perspectives on it. That was really enjoyable. I also finished reading Faye Weldon's letters upon first reading Jane Austen to her niece. Supposedly it's fictional, and I stayed up last night. I was like, I'm finishing this today. Finishing it. So I stayed up last night till it was done. And again, overall, like, I really enjoyed it. I loved hearing her thoughts on it. It's about literature through the lens of Jane Austen and her work, her life and her work. It's also about writing and writing good literature and the process of writing. So it was very good. I enjoyed all of her thoughts on that. I have a different worldview in many ways from the author, from Faye Weldon, and I enjoyed writing notes in the margins and kind of like thinking through some of the things that she was saying and agreeing with some of it and disagreeing vehemently with some of it. But it was overall really a great read. I enjoyed it. If you like books about books, and if you like literary analysis but in a much more approachable format, if you like book talk, it was worth a read. And if you like Jane Austen, so if any of those things sound appealing to you, then you would like that as well. And it's in an epistolary format, so I did enjoy that. All right, so that is my reading update. I just picked up, and I'm really enjoying it so far, Let Me Be a Woman by Elizabeth Elliot. These are letters or notes that Elizabeth Elliot wrote to her daughter when she got married in the 70s. And just her thoughts on womanhood and marriage and the like. So I'm not very far in, but I like what she's saying so far, and I like how she writes. Really enjoy her writing. So that is what I've got. And now I have people on all sides of me in the car line, so I'm feeling kind of self-conscious. So I'm gonna wrap this up. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being with me this week, and let me know in the comments your thoughts about any of the books that I'm reading and my thoughts on them and what you're reading and your thoughts on what you're reading, all of that good stuff. Let's chat in the comments. I look forward to it, and I will see you next time. Bye.